It's James Patterson here from Valiant Finance. Today we have Jess Wong with us. Jess Wong is Senior Broker at Valiant. Jess has won winner, Rising Star Award at Valiant. Winner, Asset Finance Broker of the Year 2025, Valiant, presented by Angle Finance. And finalist in the Advisors Women in Finance Award for Commercial Broker of the Year 2025. Jess, welcome.
Hi, James. Great to be here.
Great to have you. Look, it's a pretty impressive series of accolades that you've gained over your early career as a broker. Only being with Valiant for just over a couple of years now. I'm always interested in terms of when I meet sort of high performers on, where that drive comes from. And maybe I'd like to start, if we take a step back, if that's all right, around your early years. If you can tell us maybe about growing up, if there was anything in particular that a lot of the time our early years form who we are, forms our drive, whether it's in our career personally. It'd be great to hear a bit about your background, family, growing up, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was born and bred here in Sydney. My parents were migrants who came here on a boat a very long time ago. Nothing to their name, didn't speak the language, not a cent to their name either. And they pretty much built a life here. So I've always really admired my parents for the drive and perseverance that they had to come here and build that life. I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was my dad, who was one of the hardest workers I know. And what he had always said is, if you don't know something, then you learn it. And I think I've carried that with me throughout my whole life
Yeah.
to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And it's interesting, a lot of the time that drive comes from watching your parents, like having them
Mm.
as an example, having people in your family that help you and sort of drive you. And I guess it'd be interesting to get a bit of a feel. I guess before we go into Valiant, um, maybe if you could talk to us a little bit about sort of like early career, where you started, and I guess what brought you to becoming a broker at Valiant.
Yeah, of course. My journey to Valiant was never linear, to say the least. I actually came from the creative field. I was doing video production, photography, social media content for a long time.
Mm.
It was always a bit of a passion, but as I grew up or aged, I went through the years, my values changed. But what I wanted in life changed. What I wanted in terms of my lifestyle changed. And in that, I kind of not fell into finance or sales, because I'd always had a bit of a sales background. I was always interested in helping people solve problems. So I started into quite a junior role at Valiant, completely cut ties with the creative world. It was a big, scary jump, but I did it, and pretty much worked my way up to a broker now.
And you said it was maybe a challenging start with Valiant in terms of the team you were in. I think potentially initially it was sort of 6 months cold calling, I understand,
Yeah.
or almost. Obviously, cold calling is not for everyone. Can you talk us through a little bit about sort of that period, and I guess then your transition to being a broker?
Yeah, absolutely. So being in that role, it was a lot of cold, a lot of warm calling. I think being someone who changed their career a little bit later in life, you kind of don't have anything to lose. So you really got to put your first, best foot forward in terms of taking all you can from the role. It was very challenging because being hung up that many times does build quite a thick skin.
Yeah.
There are so many skills that I took from that role that I bring to this day. I'm not taking things personally, not being attached, just being able to take things as they come. So there were quite a few challenges in that role, but I think what I did to help overcome it was have a real learner's mindset about it. A bad call wasn't a bad call. It was a call that I could gain something from, listen back to, figure out what I could improve on. There was always a sense of accountability in that role as well, of what I could make from it. And I don't think I always had the vision of being a broker, but as I kind of went into the role through the months, I realized that these are skills that I can take with me to this next role. And yeah, I really haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And I think it's really interesting. I think the volume of people you spoke to over that 6 months,
Mm.
I mean, the volume that the Valiant does is quite a large volume. And so going through and getting that experience in a very quick period of time, and then talk to me, I mean, for you to become a broker in a fairly short space of time, how did that come about?
So 6 months in that junior role really kind of built up the skills that I needed to move into the broker role. I had great chats with a lot of the leaders here, and they kind of inspired me that it is something that I do have the skill sets for and match up to that kind of lifestyle that I wanted to create for myself.
Yeah.
So after 6 months in the role, I was promoted to broker
Yeah.
in asset finance,
Mm-hmm.
specialized asset finance. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we do working capital as well,
Yep.
but I really wanted to learn asset finance first before stepping in and branching out to other sectors.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that. What does it mean to be an asset finance broker? Like type of lenders you're dealing with,
Mm.
types of products that you're dealing with, types of clients. Like, can you talk us through a bit about sort of the day to day of an asset finance broker?
Yeah, it's funny. My mentor slash the head of asset finance would describe it as you're playing tennis, which is you're really bouncing from each task to each task,
Mm.
whether it's, doing the first initial call, fact find call with a client,
Yep.
trying to understand what it is that they need and finding the best solution for them,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, talking to an accountant who has a new client that they want to onboard you with and work with, and finding the best ways that they prefer working. If it's a situation that they want to run the deal themselves and you're there to support, that's something that happens day to day. You're workshopping with lenders, calling them, calling different parties to try and push the deal ahead, getting something approved, getting settlement documents. Day to day, it's all very different. So you're kind of bouncing from one task to the next to, at the end of the day, help your clients reach settlement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And I guess tell us a little bit about some of the assets that you've been able to settle over the years, and I guess it'd be great to hear if there's any sort of particular scenarios that stuck out in your mind, or a typical type of scenario of finance that you might help clients with.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a finance really it's such a broad range. You fund regular things like cars, trucks, tipper trucks, prime movers for your transport company or earthworks companies. Those are kind of industries that we work with. It can be funding for anything from that or to kitchen equipment, which is categorized as tertiary, cameras. I recently helped fund a medical clinic for a hyperbaric chamber, which is
Yeah.
yeah, an asset used to help alleviate pain for cancer
Mm.
patients. I want to say that there have been a few scenarios that stuck out to me, but one in particular would be helping this client who was doing a lot more mining work and wanted to get into earthworks moving. So his skills are very interchangeable between both. And what he wanted to do was be able to be closer to home to his family. So mining took him FIFO, first fly in, fly out. So 1 week on the mines and then
Yeah.
one
Right.
week home,
Okay.
sometimes even 1 month in the mines, 1 month home. So he needed to fund two assets. He had quite a bit of capital. He was property backed. His ABN was a little bit on the shorter side. I think it was under 2 years. And it was GC registered, which are good things. And these are the things lenders kind of look out for. So there were things that went in his favor, like the property backing, for example. What we managed to do was be able to fund him a tipper truck
Mm.
as well as it's like this large primary asset. It's like a lawnmower, but for big acreage
Got
properties.
it.
So funding these two assets enabled him to just be closer to home to his family. He didn't have to fly away for work for so long. And
Yeah.
I think that was quite rewarding because, when I called him, you could hear his kids at the background when he was at home. And
Uh,
knowing that he's going to be able to get closer to his family there was very, very rewarding. Yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. And it's funny, like sometimes, yes, we're dealing with finance and in the finance industry, which can sometimes be a dry industry, but I think what can be quite rewarding, I guess, working at Valiant and working with these clients is that sometimes like that, you're able to change lives. He can now be at home with his kids, with his wife. It's real life changing. So thanks for sharing that. I guess in the early days and as you sort of grew as a broker, can you tell us a little bit about how the reality of being a broker may be differentiable from what you thought it would be?
Yeah, absolutely. Say that it's a very fun. It was a surprisingly very fun role, very challenging. I think I had always expected it to be a challenge, which is why I wanted to do it. I think anything hard is always worth it. I'd like to think of it as two parts. It helped me build a lot of character in the hard part of it. That resilience, perseverance, saying like simple things foundationally, like saying what you're going to do. If you're going to call a client, call them back. So I would say those are the kind of hard things about it that are rewarding at the end of the day.
Mm.
And then the second part, which is like we were just talking about, at the end of the day, you're really just helping Aussies who are building their businesses. You're helping them reach their goals and aspirations, whatever they may be. I think that's the thing that I never really thought about being a broker, is that you're really making a positive impact in these people's lives.
It's funny, a lot of the brokers that I speak to that do really well, it's just going back to basics, going back to the foundation
Mm,
principles that you mentioned, just doing that day in, day out, doing those right. And then the more challenging things tend to take care of themselves because you got that rhythm. You're
yeah,
making sure you're getting the important things done.
exactly.
So I guess it'd be great. And I guess similar to that, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about maybe some of your biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, either personally or professionally, as you sort of, as a young and ambitious broker growing, you probably got big goals for yourself, but is there anything that I guess challenges you've had to overcome?
Yeah. I think just making the career change. I think when I had decided to do it, I took 2 months off and I was just like, I need a space to figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And also, you kind of feel a bit of shame, I guess, when you're changing career that
Yeah.
late. Telling people about it, is it going to work out? Having that risk, the responsibilities that I would have, with a partner, trying to pay rents, just basic things while I'm trying to figure this chapter out. I think
Mm.
that was one of the biggest challenges, to be able to close a chapter that I had invested myself in for so long and be able to step away from that. And then going into a new career. And I think how I was able to overcome it was really just to have more of a learner's mindset about everything. Take what I can. Positivity goes a very long way as well. And I think with that, those two, having a learner's mindset, being positive, and I try to read as many books as possible. I think we live in an age where there's so much information out there that you're able to kind of have a mentor online if you're listening to a podcast, for example, or reading a book. And there are so many great people who have done amazing things before us that we can learn from. And I think that's what I tried to do in this role, coming into it and overcoming the fact that I've made a career change so late in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think that, you took that time and you mentioned about sort of getting the headspace to be like, what do I want to do next? But taking that plunge, you like you said, it's like a big thing and you're worried about what are my family and friends going to think?
Mm.
Is it going to work out? A lot of uncertainty. So I guess it takes a bit of courage to do that. So, well done on that. And I think, that's really good advice for anyone who's thinking about maybe making the change, maybe looking at getting into finance, becoming a broker. Do you want to tell me a little bit about sort of the typical clients that you tend to work with, and the typical findings that they tend to seek?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of construction companies, and that could range from your subcontractor who's just turned into apprentice, or from an apprentice and needs a new car.
Yep.
Sometimes maybe they won't have good credit, and I think that's where a value of a broker comes in, getting someone who isn't able to find a loan for themselves a solution. So from that all the way to your multi-million dollar companies who are needing, 5 trucks and 5 excavators for a new contracted job with New South Wales government. But you also work with young professionals, or just professionals in general. So real estate agents, medical health professionals. I also work with some manufacturing clients who need working capital, for example, specialized equipment, maybe CNC machines. The clients that we work with are quite varied.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds hugely varied. And I guess it must be quite interesting in your role because, one moment you're speaking to, a young 20-year-old getting his first vehicle,
Yeah.
never had finance before. And then you're speaking with the CEO of a
Yeah.
multi-million dollar corporation, just seeing millions of dollars worth of equipment. Very varied. And I guess different hats you have to wear and ways you have
Yeah.
to, so kudos to you for having that. And I guess if when you're sort of speaking with clients, obviously at Valiant, a lot of the ways we work with clients is we view them as a client for life in terms of, looking at their business holistically. Not only is what is the finance they need right now, but getting the right product and finance in place that's going to help them to grow the business 6, 12, 18 months in the future, thinking long term, touching base with them, helping them as they grow, if they're having any cash flow gaps, etc., helping them through the ups and downs of their business. Is there anything, conversations you have with sort of clients that you work with over a certain period of time? Is there any particular questions that you ask them to identify sort of upcoming finance needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would really be questions such as, you go from, I guess, a big picture of where their business is at the moment to where they want to be in the future. So current state, future state, what does your business look like now? Where do you want to go? Like, where do you see your business growing in the next year, 5 years? And then drilling down to a bit more micro level, what are your margins?
Mhm.
How many clients do you work with? What kind of clients do you work with? For example, if I'm speaking to an earthworks company who has only been working with small commercial farms, but then they want to work with larger projects. Okay, how are we going to get them to that goal of being able to work with that client?
Yeah.
Where are the gaps in their cash flow to be able to pay for wages?
Mhm.
How many staff do you work with? I think having that first initial conversation with someone, being able to understand macro level what they want, will define all the questions that come after.
And then drilling into like the specifics and
Yeah.
yeah. And that's really interesting. I think a lot of business owners, especially smaller business owners, they don't have a lot of staff. They're trying to wear many hats. They don't have a lot of time. They're just struggling to keep up with their
Mm,
business. And so I guess sometimes speaking to yourself, to a broker at Valiant, it's almost like a breath of fresh air and
yeah.
being like, just coming out of the business and being like, oh yeah, actually, let me think strategic where I want to go. Let us kind of map out what that might look like in terms of finance needs over the next 6, 12 months. And so it's, I guess, a real service you're kind of providing the business owners, not only getting them the finance, but actually helping them to step out of their day to day, really be with them for the journey strategically. So you talked around one of your clients that you helped. That was really touching, like helping them get back more time with their family. Is there any interesting or wacky assets you funded or, yeah, I'm always interested to hear. I mean, I hear sometimes we fund ice cream trucks.
Yeah.
Um, is there any assets that have stuck out in your mind that, was kind of different to what you might see?
I think the hyperbaric chamber was an interesting
Okay, wow,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was a cool one. I haven't funded anything too exciting yet. Like, I'd love
Okay.
to fund something like an airplane
Okay.
or something within that realm.
Yeah,
But the hyperbaric chamber was pretty cool.
yeah, wow.
Assets are fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well because when you're working with assets like that, not all lenders fund it.
Yeah.
So again, value of a broker, being able to understand like, what do the lenders fund and what don't they,
Yeah.
especially with those kind of tertiary items
Yeah.
where um, a lot of lenders have caps in terms of how much they could
Mm,
fund. So sometimes, like that hyperbaric chamber, for example, we only had a cap of 75K that we could go up to for
yeah.
an asset, and he needed another one purchased, but the vendor he was purchasing it from wasn't accredited with the lender.
Got it.
So the lenders have accreditation processes that
Yep.
they can kind of validate a vendor as a dealership
Okay.
purchase.
Yep.
So what we did instead was find him a working capital facility
Yep.
that helped purchase that item, as well as having a revolving facility to help with any kind of invoices and wages. Yeah.
Yeah, great. No, I love that. And the line of credit is
Mm,
such a flexible and, such a big use case at the moment for businesses. I think, post COVID, businesses sort of recovering, the economy looks like it's, on its way, continues to be ups and downs. We've said it many times before, but, a line of credit can just help them, with those ebbs and flows of cash flow gaps or growing as they take
yeah.
on larger projects. So that was a great solution. I guess maybe I guess in what historically has been a male dominated industry, do you have any comments about, how you found that?
Yeah, it's always a bit of a contentious topic. I think there's a lot of noise about gender roles in society and social media. Personally, in my experience in finance, overall, I would say that it's been very neutral. I think you do get the, conversation here and there where you may be talked down to. And I would never discount anyone else's experience where they felt disrespected or discriminated against. I'd like to go into any conversation, any networking, any sort of interaction with the focus of being myself as I am a broker and I've come here to do a job and find a solution versus the conversation being about I am a woman broker, which, I do celebrate women. I think it's, I'm so grateful to be nominated for this award for the Advisors Women in Finance. And I think there's always a time and place to be able to celebrate
Mm,
women or just generally always do that. But the way that I've kind of just dealt with the industry and viewing it as a male dominated industry is just the fact that I am a broker and I have skills, and that's the only focus that I want to have.
and I think from the way that clients, I've heard clients and partners who work with other brokers that, you help their clients with and they rave about your service and clearly, you're showing that, your skills are there and backing yourself.
And sometimes the best thing is also just proving someone wrong. If you've felt that disrespect, and let the work speak for itself. And eventually, 9 times out of 10, people end up turning around, apologizing. Yeah.
No, I love that. So if we just kind of take a segue, I guess you talked about the clients you work with, but could you tell us maybe about some of the partners that you work with? You know, we work with resi brokers, accountants, financial planners typically. Could you tell us a little bit sort of how you've worked with them in the past and how you sort of assist them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a few partners that I work with. It really depends on their experience and how they want to work. I think one of the things that I like to do first and foremost whenever I get introduced to a new partner or start working with them is just sitting down and having a really good chat about how they like to work, what their experience has been in the
Mm.
past, a bit about Valiant and just where we can fill the gaps. It's similar to working with a client where, okay, where I'm going to add value to this relationship where you're going to gain something and it's going to be an easy process for you. I
Yeah.
think having a sense of ease is one of the biggest things as well.
Yes.
So having that conversation at the forefront, finding out how they like to work. If it's a little bit more involved, I'll support where I can
Mm.
to help find the solution for them. If it's something where they want me to be hands off and they work directly with the client, then we work like that and I help find the solution in the
Yeah.
background.
So flexible in the way you work, they can be the communicator with the client, or
Yes.
a lot of our partners, the majority of our partners, they're so under the pump with their day to
Mm,
day that a lot of the time they've worked with you, they trust you. If they have a client, you probably just work with the client, keep the partner updated,
yes.
get the deal approved and settled, or I guess commission the next week. Happy client, happy partner. You know, it works well. And I think it's nice for partners to be able to keep focused on their core business and knowing they have a kind of strategic partner, a trusted partner that they can have their clients work with, yourself, other brokers at Valiant, get them that great outcome. And, you know, the partner, they come back
Yeah.
to the partner, to the broker, etc., for their core business. So
Yeah,
that's a real great
exactly.
service.
Yeah.
And I guess on that point, for resi brokers, accountants, financial planners, if they're currently looking to diversify more into the commercial business finance space, is there any tips you have for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping an open mind in a conversation, I feel, is one of the biggest pieces of advice. I think residential consumer in that space, things that lenders look out for is very, very different to the commercial space. I think I've spoken to a lot of my partners where they completely rule a client out for funding, but if we have a conversation with them and you pass on their details and we're able to understand a little bit deeper about their profile, then there could be a deal there. Yeah, having that conversation and keeping open minds, like keeping up to date with trends, understanding how different industries operates in their peaks and lows is another great point as well. So there are always opportunities there, whether that is in asset finance or working capital.
Mm.
I think if there is a client who is looking for asset finance, 9 times out of 10 they'll need working capital and vice versa.
Yeah, got it. And I think you talked earlier about making it easy, and you know it's such an important point. Our partners are pleasantly surprised when they partner with Valiant around how easy it is to transition into commercial business finance. Times as if a partner hasn't done it before, there's this kind of myth that you know, it's unachievable. It's gonna be, you know, extremely
Mm,
difficult to make that transition. I think once they make it, they're like, "Oh, okay, I can lean on Valiant to sort of get the deal done with my client, keep me updated," and then obviously they share in the commission there, and client is happy. So I guess would you have any advice if anyone's thinking about maybe applying to be a broker at Valiant? Is there any sort of advice you'd have for them?
I would say buckle up because it's a bit of a journey. Bit of a roller coaster
Uh-huh.
ride, but it's awesome. I would say always keep a learner's mentality, keep going. I feel like in life, being a broker is a law of averages. The more doors you knock on,
Yep.
eventually one will open. And be positive. It's a bit cheesy, but I think positivity really takes you a long way in this role and being able to have an open mind about what's to come and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No. Well, look, Jess, thank you so much for today. It's been great for me to see your career progression at Valiant. I'm really excited to see how your career progresses going forward as well. And as I said, the partners are always raving about the service that you provide to their clients and the great job you're doing. So thank you so much for today.
Thanks, James.